Hello and welcome. This is World Talks on TVP World, and my name is Anna Kalczyńska. Will the 19th package of sanctions make a difference? Can EU unblock the 170 billion euros frozen assets for the benefit of Ukraine? As the frustration grows, European Union appears to be ramping up its efforts to further crack down on Russia. Now I'm joined by Tomasz Włostowski, managing partner at EU strategies, to discuss about the real pressure EU can apply to bring Kremlin to the negotiation table. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we will start by asking the obvious. What distinguishes this 19th pack of sanctions from the previous one? What are the main goals, and how important and how painful for the Kremlin could it be?
Well, actually, we have to see, right? Because we don't know yet exactly what's going to be in the sanctions package. As we know, it has been pulled in the last sort of minutes. It hasn't been fully released yet to the member states. We're expecting this to happen any day now, probably either tomorrow or maybe early next week. However, I think everybody expects the sanctions to mostly focus on circumvention and hitting some of the entities a lot of them probably in third countries that are sort of helping Russia circumvent the existing EU sanctions on Russia. So we're expecting some measures in energy, in banking, and basically all the sort of infrastructure that Russia has been building with the help of entities in third countries that are helping them circumvent the existing sanctions and allowing them to sort of sell their energy around the world and collect revenues to finance the war.
All right. So let us discuss the frozen assets, 170 billions, as was mentioned. And, how is the EU handling this issue? There were divergences between the member states. Brussels, namely the Belgian government, was not very eager to cooperate with the European Union on that matter. Has this position shifted? And with the pressure coming from Berlin, is it even possible to move on?
Well, I think a couple of things need to be pointed out, right? The first thing is I think we talk a lot about how much of Russian frozen assets are frozen in Europe and in the EU. I think it's important to underline that most of that money is actually in Belgium, as you correctly noted. So basically, when we talk about is the EU ready to confiscate the assets? Well, it's not actually the EU that's going to be confiscating the assets. It actually would be the Belgian government. So, of course, the Belgian government is extremely concerned. It's being asked to do something that most of the other member states will not have to do, and understandably, it's afraid of the consequences of the liability. So that's number one. Right. Number two, I think, as you also perfectly noted, this discussion has been going on for quite a while, and it seems like we're in a stalemate. And from that, I think it's proper for us just to come to the conclusion that, and this is maybe some sad news, but I don't actually believe that those assets are going to get, quote unquote, confiscated. That money for sure is never probably going to go back to Moscow. Unless there is, number one, a peace deal and Russia agrees to compensate Ukraine for the damages caused by the war. But unless that happens, and probably that's not going to happen anytime soon, that money is not going back to Moscow. But at the same time, it doesn't get confiscated. What does that mean? It means that Europe right now, the European Union leaders and their finance ministers, are working on some way to use those assets to generate the money behind it, so it's almost 200 billion, to use that money to help Ukraine without actually confiscating the money itself. And there are various avenues for that. One of them is the so-called special purpose vehicles, where that money would be sort of taken outside of Belgium, of the Belgian government. So the money that would actually be used for Ukraine would not be confiscated. That's option number one. And option number two, which is probably the more likely at this point, which is where the money that's already sitting in Belgium would be used to purchase European bonds then the money that EU gets from the sale of that bonds would be used to help Ukraine, and the Russian assets would still sort of be, European bonds would be part of the assets, and Russia could expect to get the money back once again it signs a peace deal with Ukraine. Ukraine is happy, gets compensated for the damages, which probably is very far away in the future. So basically, to recap, money is not going to get confiscated, quote unquote, but it's not going back to Russia either, and sooner or later we're going to find a way to use it to help Ukraine.
So what's the reticence behind this move? If you could please help us understand, what are the arguments being put forward against confiscating the frozen assets? After all, it seems obvious. It's a matter of justice, and Ukraine is waiting for the money.
Well, there's a couple of points, right? I think the first one is, let's call it sort of the macroeconomic argument. And I think the reason why we know the money is not going to get confiscated is because there is reluctance to go deep into this argument, and that tells me that nobody's actually discussing it. So this is the argument that, look, euro is sort of a global currency, a global reserve currency. We want investors to purchase euros. We want investors to store their money in Europe and not be afraid of that money getting confiscated, right? This is an argument that's being quite vocally raised by the German government, by the French government as well. So these are the big euro economies which are hoping to make euro the global reserve currency. And they want foreign governments to feel comfortable that once the money is in Europe, it's safe. It's not going to get confiscated. It's not going to get, quote unquote, stolen by Europe. And it's not going to get used as a punishment for something that those governments do. So that's sort of argument number one. Argument number two, and that's the argument raised by Belgium, which is, look, this money is not, as we've already discussed, it's not in Europe, it's actually in Belgium specifically. We, the Belgian government, would have to confiscate it. It's not clear under international law that you can just take somebody's money because you believe that they're doing something wrong. Of course, here in Central Europe and in Europe in general, we're, I think, all in agreement that Russia's doing very horrible things, unspeakable things in Ukraine. But at the same time, there is no clear international law basis to confiscate those assets. Of course, lawyers always make arguments. I'm a lawyer, so I know you can always make arguments why this money should be confiscated. But it's true as well that there isn't a clear international law precedent for just confiscating somebody's money. So that's the argument that Belgium is raising, because it's afraid that once it confiscates the money, then Russia is going to somehow, number one, punish Belgium. So Belgium's afraid, of course, it's a small country, it's in the middle of Europe, but it's a small country. So it's afraid of having Russia, express its wrath at Belgium. And at the same time, it's afraid of financial consequences to Belgium if Russia was to somehow punish Belgium for that.
Thank you so much for helping us understand, Tomasz Włostowski, Managing Partner, EU Strategies, of the complicated issue behind the frozen assets and confiscation that is not going to happen, obviously. Thank you so much also for being with us here on TVP World again, and good to see you. See you soon then.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you so much for being with us here on World Talks. Please stay tuned to TVP World for more comments and news.